I'm performing my ritual of congratulating myself for remembering to hit record. I have yet to fail that ritual, but it's my own little self serotonin burst that hey, you did your job.
I
Um,
have to approve that I'm being
oh
recorded.
yeah,
I can leave the meeting if I'm not comfortable. That's good consent. It's being recorded.
it's good. Yeah, I didn't even know it did that until yesterday. Somebody mentioned it too. Um, so this is pretty cool. A number of years ago, my wife, who's also an extremely creative person, uh, turned to me and she was like, "No, you don't get it. You are creative on this level that other people aren't. Like you're like this force of nature, and it's very intimidating." Well, and I guess that's probably true, but there are a number of people out there that I look at and I'm like, "Holy shit, how are you doing this?" And my guest today or right now, Kim is one of them. She is one of those people that I make a lot of stuff and I put out a lot of stuff. And then I watch Kim, and just from like based on her updates of what she is doing and all the different things, it's exhausting to me. And like I don't sleep and it's exhausting to me. Like it's
I don't need it.
right, yeah. Yeah, it's fucking nuts. And so uh Kim has done and not only has she done it all of these interesting things, she's done them really, really, really well. And it's horrifying and disgusting. It's just like, oh, fuck, can you not be good at something? Um,
Warnings.
and it's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic to watch. So I'll let that kind of all come out. Let's instead of diving into it immediately, let's start with our usual question at the beginning. What was the first thing for you that you really hooked onto when you were a kid? Like the thing that held your attention for more than a couple of weeks that you wanted to really like dive into.
So, first of all, thanks for that ostentatious introduction. I am very flattered that you choose those words to say about me and that you think that I'm actually good at all the things I try to do,
Oh my
because
God,
sometimes
it's ridiculous.
I
I,
just
I've
do
yet to
that.
see you, I've yet to see you put anything out where I was just like, I would have done that a little differently, or maybe that. No, like it always works.
Well,
It's really
that's
cool.
good. Um, I thought about this question. So, like, what was the first thing that you were truly passionate about? And I had to go back to my childhood. And I have to say that the answer is pirates.
That's a new one.
So
I haven't had that one
I
yet.
was very passionate. My first, like, what do you call it? Like grandiose interest or special interest or passion, however you say it, would be pirates. I grew up in New Jersey and we had a beach place on the Jersey shore on Brigantine Island. And there is this legend that Captain Cook had buried his treasure on the island. And I was fascinated and had to learn all about pirates and all about buried treasure and get a metal detector and go looking for it. And the treasure really wasn't that exciting. It was more the aspect of being a pirate and having a ship and going on adventures and being swarthy. And then my childhood best friend, we weren't even like in kindergarten at the time, and I remember we would dress up like pirates and make stories about our ships and like design the ships. And when I moved to Virginia, we even wrote letters. It was like writing letters in the 80s was the thing you did with your long distance friends, because definitely my parents would only let me use like 3 minutes of long distance phone calls. And so that no one could understand our secret pirate letters, we actually wrote them in nautical flags. So I could read nautical flags for a while. That was pretty cool. And then growing older, like I guess you go to Disney World as a kid, or we did, and they had the Pirates of the Caribbean ride before they did the movies about it, and I thought that was awesome. And growing up, then my interest morphed into like other pirate related things. First, I learned about Anne Bonny and Mary Read, the female pirates who had to kind of disguise themselves as men and go aboard the ship. And at that point, I hadn't really considered that women couldn't be pirate captains. My next deep interest when I was about 7 or 8 was Star Wars. when I rented the original 1977 A New Hope film from the local library, and I was obsessed and couldn't stop watching it. But it's very much a pirate story about space pirates, the Millennium Falcon. Like Leia turns into a female pirate and goes off on this damn fool crusade across the galaxy. They're all pirates raiding the empire, like the British Empire
Hmm.
or the Spanish Empire, you know, in space or in the Caribbean or on the East Coast of America in the 1700s, what have you. And yeah, Star Wars held my sole interest until I unfortunately discovered men in my teenage years. I kind of wish that Luke Skywalker would have been an easier love interest than some of the men I dated. Um, but I still love Star Wars and I still love pirates.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker stayed with you this whole time, and that
He
is
has,
amazing.
yeah. But yeah, there was an interesting thing where, when you ask the kids what they want to be when they grow up, and they say like a doctor or a lawyer or a basketball star or a rock star. I didn't even want to be a rock star. I wanted to be a pirate. And then I realized that there wasn't really a market for that outside of Somalia. And so I had to like change interests. So I was like, okay, well, I'll be a rock star then, because it seemed rather pirate-like. You get to sit in a bus
Mhm.
and drink rum and like, command a bunch of swarthy people in like raggedy clothes. And so I started singing in bands, and there wasn't much water involved, except I do work for a metal cruise now. So I do occasionally get to sing on the Caribbean on a ship while drinking rum. So that is awesome. But, small steps towards the ultimate goal of being a
So
pirate
you
queen.
didn't, did you have any classical training for vocals?
Oh yeah, so that
Okay,
that was
good, because
that
once again, it's one of those things that you're such a good singer that I would have been just slightly cheesed if that was just one of those things you realized one day that you had perfect pitch and just did it.
well,
So,
I'm glad you think that I'm a good singer, because I don't think I'm a good singer. I think I'm kind of a mediocre singer, but I like performing more than anything. And I played piano growing up, but I didn't like the idea of being stuck behind a keyboard, because you can't really like jump around and move around, and you can't even really see your cool costume. And the days of guitars are kind of gone, even though I know Mike and Bella Morte played one for a while in a couple of bands, but it's kind of gimmicky. So singing it was. But like, yeah, I was in school. I did like acting to be on stage, and then one play was a play, and the other play was a musical. So if I wanted to get a part, I had to learn how to sing, and I was like mortified of singing. So I joined the chorus, and we did like classical, choral arrangements, which I think are really cool. You can do some of that like Arvo part, creepy harmonies with yourself. You don't need anyone else to do that. And then my mom put me in like real voice lessons, which I didn't like because I didn't really enjoy singing like operas and soprano stuff. Like Night Wish is not really my jam. I wanted to sing rock vocals, and
right.
they didn't have someone to teach you rock vocals, but the technique stands. And
Yeah, like
I
once you know
figured,
how to throw, you can throw. Everything else is just shape.
yeah, like warming up and like morphing the palate of your mouth. And I learned how to do death metal scream a similar way, with where you're breathing from your diaphragm and pushing a lot of air through like a distortion in your throat. And one time I lost my voice, and I went to the voice doctor, and they're like, no, you're fine. So I guess the training was worth it. I didn't
Right,
fuck
that's
up
what I
my
was going to say, because I know that's gone a long way for Donna. Like, we've done tours, and one tour, like the last three shows, she had walking pneumonia for it. So she'd like get out of the van, walk on stage, do the show, get back in the van, and but because of that training, she was able to do the shows every time. Like we've only ever canceled one show because she lost her voice, and she went up, she did three songs, and went like, "That's it." And then we bought everybody shots, so
right.
still won the show.
It's super important to be able to fall back on that. I see so many people in the metal world, which is the realm in which I primarily exist these days, that don't have that training. They just make a big scary sound as a big scary dude, and they constantly lose their voice or have to like not speak to anyone,
Forget the
or
pump.
as you get sick when you're traveling and being around a bunch of people and talking to them in a loud space, you get constant upper respiratory shit, which is a problem. The guitarist doesn't have a problem playing if he has walking pneumonia as much as the singer has a problem singing. But falling back on that training really does help that anxiety. And just another part of being a fucking pirate, honestly, because they had to like raid the ship if they were,
Yeah, get
not
up to your job, figure
earthy
it
or
out.
whatever, like or you get killed. But it's a part of that like swarthy character
We
that I
were out
think
with
is
Bella
important.
Morte when swine flu hit, and their
Oh
number
God.
was exactly right. Uh, 4 out of the 10 of us all got it. And I did one show sitting on stage in a pool of sweat, because that's your job, play the show.
Yeah.
Well, I did. It was like that, and everybody else did their thing, but I was just, but you got
That's
to do it, you know?
the two most there's a tie for the most extreme shows I've had to power through. And they're both good stories, so I'll tell them. One, what I actually got kicked out of Guar for, though I think it was some more nefarious reasons, which I won't
Mhm.
go into, because in the interest of political niceness. But on my final show with Guar as Bulbatron, like I at one of the middle songs, I had to fight this giant monster called Mr. Perfect, and we take him apart. And then I thought, in the interest of making the show more grandiose, I'll use some of my wrestling training from when I used to be a wrestler to do like an elbow drop on the leg. Well, I fucked up the aim and I landed on, instead of the soft, spongy, foamy part, the steel support that is the actual stilt of the costume. And I definitely broke several ribs. Like, and I felt it, but then I had to continue playing the show. I think there's like 3 or 4 more songs, and I'm just like, you're running on adrenaline at that point. But playing a show with a broken rib sucks as a singer because you have to use
Your
your ribs
diaphragm.
like being, yeah. I got through it, and then they're like, "Oh, well, you were careless and injured yourself, and that could be a liability." I was like, "I was trying to put on an awesome show, and we're supposed to be like fighting giant monsters. How is like continuing the show with a broken rib not the ultimate professionalism?" But
Yeah,
they didn't see it that way.
yeah, and it's
Then
like
the
Guar. I mean, come on. There are going to be like, I'm sorry, but I'm sure people slip on blood during shows, things like that. Like,
Yeah, I actually did not see that happen because, like, I'm sure that happens in the crowd because it's the
mhm.
ultimate slippery when wet
Oh yeah,
experience, especially in the mosh pits and stuff. But on stage, we fight it with like more. The blood is kind of like the costume blood that you get from the Halloween store.
right.
There's carrageenan in it and makes it like goopy, so it's not as slippery, I don't think.
I got
But
best at a Guar show back at
yeah,
the 930 Club, like in the early 90s. Shit, I saw
that,
Guar in a skate park where they played like down in the middle of the a half pipe before, like when they were still doing um, the paper masks and stuff like that before they'd kind of evolved into the whole thing.
yeah, that sounds like a very Richmond show. The whole
Well,
VC
Northern Virginia,
movement.
so
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. No, the stories of the early days. I wasn't around for that, but I loved hearing Dave talk about them, which
Mhm.
is how I got that gig. But yeah, the second most extreme continue the show through all adversity pirate ass situation happened recently with my new local band Ectoplasm, which is sort of like, it's a death metal band, but we have like the imagery of 80s Ghostbusters, and it's like UV lights. And it was sort of a silly inspiration, but it came out really cool in in the implementation. And all the songs are about like Virginia hauntings, so different ghosts. And we got booked to play our very first outdoor festival out near Fredericksburg. And I've been in other bands that use black lights, like the Kung Fu Dykes back in the day. And outdoor festivals were always a challenge, especially if you play before nightfall, because you can't use black light. So like we played barbecue with Kung Fu Dykes, and we had to just go without blacklight. But they had put us on the headlining spot one of the days. I don't know why. I guess because they didn't want anyone else to be upstaged by our amazing theatrics. I don't know. But um, I noticed some of those giant bell hornets, European hornets, aka murder hornets, flying around the festival grounds as we were like doing merch and stuff throughout the day. And as soon as they turned the black lights on, I have this big white dress that looks like a
Oh
ghost
shit, yeah.
and a UV reactive wig. I turned into a human bug zapper.
Right.
And I was swarmed by the murder hornets while playing this set. And then my first thought was like, okay, stay calm and they won't sting you, and just focus on like how badass this looks like being swarmed by hornets while continuing to play this show. And like at some point about 3 songs in, there was a bunch of people up at the front of the stage screaming and pointing at me to look down, and there were about 9 or 10 giant hornets crawling up the layers of my skirt. At that point, like I stopped and tried to jump to get them out. They did not come out, so we ceased the set while I ran off stage and put on some like merch, like a TX2XL ectoplasm shirt. But yeah, you continue the show whether you have
Yeah,
bird flu or walking pneumonia, or like the one thing I would say though is if you have something to where the show is going to sound awful,
that's
like you
different.
gotta cancel. Like if you're an operatic singer and your voice is truly gone and it's going to be like, yeah, off key, like Ozzy. There was a lot of times I saw Ozzy that he should not have sung the show. Like, and eventually they just got a singer to sing for him backstage. Honestly, that's common knowledge for years, and it made the Ozzy fronted Black Sabbath shows like tolerable. Like when he actually was singing, it was like a whole step off key.
Mhm.
It's just unlistenable. Sometimes Axl Rose is guilty of that too, and certainly like what Motley Crue these days. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I've seen those videos.
there's times
Well, I
when
mean, that's what they do for a living, so they have to bring money in somehow, but there's also the kind of like you're really kind of selling a shitty product.
yeah, like maybe just put it on track and hopefully no one notices at that
Right.
point. At least 50% of the audience isn't gonna notice that it's recorded.
Mhm. Yep, yep, yep.
That's always a good backup. Maybe I feel like singers could have that so they don't have to cancel if it's a big money show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't. And I honestly like the trick that I use with my vocals for all the weird effects. The cool thing about it is that it only goes through, like the effects in my case only go through if I'm actually singing. So like if you drop the mic or whatever, you're not getting tracked vocals just using the system that I do. So like, and you're modulating what's coming out. So like I'm using a vocoder to drive these tracked vocals with the distortions and stuff, but I'm actually modulating it as I'm singing. And then when I
Oh,
stop,
that's
it goes
neat.
away. Yeah, it's a really cool trick. I actually wrote Skinny Puppy's sound guy at one point because I was like, this is what I do. Do you guys do this? Because it's a really effective system. He was like, no, but that's brilliant. I was like, cool. I was just kind of shocked that nobody else had figured it out.
That's really neat. I'd like to hear you explain that
I can
when
I
I'm
can
like
write it out for you.
equipment.
It's
Yeah,
really
at some
simple.
point.
No, it's really simple. It's just instead of driving a vocoder with a synth, you drive them with distorted vocals that are already recorded, and
Oh
then
yeah.
it mixes the two of them, and then you're modulating them, and there's just a
Oh,
gate on.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
haven't heard of anyone else doing that. I've heard of people doing things like that with like guitar pedal
mhm,
loops, but not with the vocoder. So that's
yeah,
fun. I think
yeah.
my
But it's
boyfriend
cool.
has
And it
a
also
few.
doesn't feed back because there's no way for it to cycle. Um,
Right.
so so then yes, so that you got into bands, and I first became aware of you because I think we played with you like 20 years ago or something, and it was This Means You, this something.
Yeah, this
Is
means
that
you.
it?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my main band for a long time, and I think that is the first time I played with you either at
Who's it
Tokyo
Nathan?
Road or Outback Lodge at the Dawning at one point in time. And those days are really great days of
Yeah.
Charlottesville music. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Those were fantastic. That's where we got Mike from. Our drummer was from playing with them. His band played, and I was like, I want him.
yeah, right. I steal so many musicians that way these days, like from other bands you play with. You're like, ooh, that guy. So I wonder if he wants, especially drummers, they get
Mhm. Yeah.
poached because they're in short supply.
hmm Well, and with
And the
him,
one,
because he was like, "Well, you guys live up there, and I live down here. How are we going to make this work?" I'm like, "Are you good?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll send you the songs. You learn the songs. You come up. We'll go on tour." It's like we
yeah,
don't have to be in the same place. We live in the future. So,
exactly. Like once the internet got good enough to where you could practice remotely or send tracks. I was like, oh, I don't actually have to be in a band with only people who live in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Then I joined bands in like Canada. Now I play in a band in Ireland, Cruachan, and I just fly in for gigs, which honestly, like, that's great. I get to play these really cool gigs and I get to go to Ireland all the time, or our next gig is in France and then Spain and stuff. Like, but it's nerve-wracking because I feel like when you're rehearsing your set all the time, like you feel comfortable with it. And then when you just fly in and you haven't rehearsed, you have to be like completely confident in your own abilities. Again, back to the pirate thing. You're like, yep, I'm here. We're captain the ship, you know?
I think one of the reoccurring themes of all of this, and these people that I've talked to who kind of like, you just dive in and you do the thing because it's what you want to do regardless, like, is that saying yes, like, I'll figure it out. We'll make it work because I want to do this more than it scares me to try and do it.
Like I encounter that a lot with my business, and it's not so straightforward. Like for a living, for people who don't know me, I make stage clothes under the name Killa Custom Rockwear for bands and for wrestlers. I am not a fashion designer. I did not ever like set out to be a fashion designer. Like I don't have a passion for fashion. I am just like a goth who made her own clothes because we didn't have stores unless you went to like New York City or Berlin or something that provided them, and I didn't have that kind of money anyway. And then I started making cooler clothes when I started playing in bands to be on stage. And then bigger bands that we played with were like, oh, where'd you get that jacket? Can you make one for me? And then that kind of spiraled out of control until I was able to like quit my faculty job and just make leather jackets. But like, I don't have any formal training. I basically had my mother and like my friend's older sister who makes like drag queen costumes in San Francisco teach me how to like make corsets and pattern a corset. And once you can do that, everything is pretty simple from there because you get the basic concept. But I started making wrestling gear and I had no idea how to show like stretch fabrics, or sometimes people will give me a project and I'm like, I've never made a garment like this or out of this kind of fabric. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, well, all the information in the world is at our fingertips. And sometimes you just have to try and figure out like what doesn't work. And I mean, then the challenge is making it cost efficient because I do this for a living. I'm actually not passionate about making clothes. It is my job, but I love it because I get to be creative and I don't have to get up in the morning and I can be a pirate and do whatever I want and go wherever I want and do it. But like, if I got up in the morning, what I would choose to do is not like so, especially now that I've been doing this for a living for 13 years. Like I'd never get a chance to make stuff for myself. It used to be awesome. I loved making outfits for myself. And now I'm like, but if I take a break from it for a while and I do other things, then I'm like, man, I really want to make something cool. Or if I don't work 12-hour days and I really have like time to take on a project that I'm like really interested in, or for a band that I'm really passionate about or something, then it's very cool and you remember like that spark. But I think just like all creative people, it is a privilege to be able to be a professional creative in whatever way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're like, you don't have to have a job because your art and your music sells well, you're a content creator, you are a touring musician, you sell paintings, you are a fashion designer. Like if you don't have to work, even if you're working for another creative under their direction, or if you're being your own creative, like that's a privilege. And I love being able to do that. But whatever you do to pay the bills, I think becomes work. And like,
yeah, well, the whole, if you do what you love for a living, you don't work it. Fuck you. That's
you
not.
never have a day off in your life.
Yes, exactly. No. When you work for yourself, there's always something you should be doing. Somebody was asking me, it's like, well, how do you find time to play video games so much? And I was like, I make it a point of not working, and then I play until I feel like an asshole, and then I go back to work. Like it's one of the only things I can do that isn't work. So,
yeah. I feel like that's for people that are hyper creative, like both of us, and have a tendency to do things all the time or the desire to do things. That's the natural state, is to be doing things and creative things. That is my resting state, is like next project, like give it to me. And I like to have lots of them going at once. Like I'm the happiest.
because then you're able to kind of, what am I in the mood to be doing?
Yeah.
And so it makes it easier and you don't feel quite as oppressed by it.
I think starting projects and finishing projects is hard for me. So if I have a burst of energy, I'll start a bunch of projects and then I can come back to them at once. And then I need another burst of energy to finish all of them. But then you can like pick and choose. Deadlines sometimes tell me I have to finish the project. But I think that's fun about being in a bunch of different bands or working on a bunch of different types of gear is you can have a bunch going, but then nothing is ever truly done. Yeah, and there's always something you should be doing. So unlike I would say people that need like by default would be doing nothing or relaxing or playing video games or drinking or sleeping or hey, what you up to? I always get like this text from people who are just like doing nothing. Like at no point if you text me right now, like, do you want to do this thing? Do I have nothing going on? Like I might be desperately in need of an escape if you just timed it just right, but normally I have to plan it. But like, yeah, I think I travel, which is my time off. I can't take the sewing machine on the plane, even though I do a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Like,
I often see you with the, okay, I am here and I have to do this before I can do this, you know?
yeah, I have a studio. Well, my boyfriend is Swedish, and we live in Stockholm half time. I'm in Virginia most of the time, which is where I am right now. I have a studio set up there, which is great because I can kind of use both places as like a home base of operations and then take machines wherever. But the main thing is like, can I afford to not bring the machine? If I still have to pay some bills that month, then I got to bring work with me to the hotel
Mhm.
and sew for a few hours or whatever. But if I can just pull like a 20-hour workday before I leave, then maybe I don't need to bring it and I can just relax for a bit. I also am only probably one of the only people in the world that like finds drinking has positively impacted my life. Like I I don't have any history of like addicts or alcoholism in my family, and I find I'm much more of a like a pub drinker or like a beer garden drinker, European style, where in the evening you go sit somewhere and you have like two beers and a random conversation,
Mhm.
and I find that entirely relaxing. It makes me be present for a moment, quiet, feel like, oh, I should be doing this and this and this and this, and you know,
Yeah,
I
no,
think,
that's very much how Donna is. It's funny though, because we were talking about like when you're constantly going. Every once in a while, she'd be like, "Are you okay?" I'm sitting there like, and she's like, "What?" It's like I finished all my projects, and now I don't know what to do with myself, and I'm not quite ready to start something yet. So I'm just like, so I get really itchy with that.
I recently got back into reading fiction, which is something I haven't done since I was a teenager. Because usually, if I take the time to read a book, which is almost never, I want to be like productive, you know. And when
I do
I listen
audiobooks.
to podcasts when
Way
I'm
good.
working, and I used to listen to kind of inane shit like serial killer podcasts or whatever. And now, for a while, I was like, oh, I want to listen to, why am I wasting 8 hours a day listening to like true crime when I could be learning about supernovas or something. So then I would switch to educational podcasts. And now I'm like just doing way too many things and I'm not allowing my mind time to relax. So I switched to like science fiction novels, which is something I loved growing up, my Star Wars novels and like Dune, the whole Dune series. And I listen to audiobooks of science fiction novels now and like it's kind of really relaxing. I find that I have no obligation to pay attention to how pulsars work, like while I'm trying to figure out how to put a zipper in this really difficult vinyl, you know?
It's also good for like it's great for me with listening to audiobooks because I'm like when I'm painting, the less I think, the better. And you know how it's like with painting. So it's like
Yeah.
so it's like the less I am kind of telling myself what to do and just letting my brain because it knows what it wants to, or the hand knows what it needs to do. So I'm focusing on that. It's doing its own thing. I'll pick back up in like half an hour, still going, okay, all right, cool. And then go back to the book. So
Yeah, painting is a total alternate state of mind. And yeah, I'd be interested in the way you do that too, because as an oil painter, my paintings are super time consuming. They take like 50 to 100 hours each. I make large
crazy because I
scale.
use oil, but I'm like I knock them out way faster than that. So
Yeah, that's a different process. And like,
and yours are so
yeah, mine are
regimented.
very like, I have to get in a zone for a long time. And I don't know. It's something I'm really passionate about. I think painting is actually maybe the thing, creative talent that I'm like best at, not just because I'm naturally good at it, because I did it a lot, like growing up since I was 6 or 7 years old. I've been painting with oils and drawing all through high school and stuff. And I finally found a genre that no one else really does and that people like to buy. So that's great. But do I want to lock myself in a room alone with like cancer causing substances for 400 hours to do a new show right now, that like might sell for like 10 grand or something if I'm lucky. And I do that once every couple of years now. Because
Well, that's
it's
actually a good,
like an album.
good segue. Let's go back to that because you're, in addition to all of this stuff, you're very deeply in the sciences. Um, and
Yes.
your father, both your parents were part of
So
this.
both my parents are in physics. Growing up, I had a weird childhood, I guess. Not really that weird, but I mean, everyone's parents have a profession, right? My dad is like the head of the American Institute of Physics, so he like oversees physics publications now, kind of emeritus actually, because he's retired. But before that, he was working on like particle accelerators, which is why we moved to Virginia. So Jefferson Lab and CBAF, the Continuous Electron Beam Accelerator Facility. And he's the inventor of the free electron laser, which like does a bunch of cool, it's a really powerful laser that can put a spot on the moon or turn polyester into cotton by etching the fibers or, eat fat away or whatever. And then my mom works in like electron microscopes and electron sources for atomic spectroscopy. And yeah, so I grew up like going to science lectures like Princeton University and like sitting in my parents' labs waiting for like, I don't know, just sitting in a cafe, you get all these like Russian nuclear physicists coming up like, let me show you a trick. Do you know how to cook hot dog with extension cord? Like, or in the Saturday Princeton physics lectures be like simulating atomic interactions. That was the Kimberly-tron, and we have like the positively charged electrons and the negatively charged particles, and you're all just bouncing off the gluons, and I messed that up, but it was a
All right,
fun
nobody's checking
activity.
your work.
What?
I said nobody's checking your work. You're fine.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I'm sure someone is. It's the internet,
No.
but yeah. So the positively charged particles are in the nucleus, and the electron is negative, and then you have the quarks and the gluons, which are interacting with the electrons. I don't know. I got it backwards in the previous discussion. Anyway, so yeah, but I did not actually, I did get a degree in computer science. I was doing like ray tracing interactions, which I think are really cool. So I wanted to be like a video game programmer or like work for Pixar or something. Um,
And ray tracing,
uh,
it's basically how light is rendered, right?
so yeah, it was really neat. So you're basically, if you have a light source here or the sun, you're casting rays over your pixel grid at a material, and you have like the object, which is, meet my hand with a skin shader, and there's like some translucent things, and there's the shape of it, and there's the way it interacts with this over here and creates a shadow, and this light source here and creates a shadow, and then do that times like 60 frames a second. And it's a lot of calculus and math and matrices and stuff. And it was the first thing I ever thought was hard. But so that's why I did it. And I got a C, I think. so, so that usually like things are kind of easy for me, and I find them interesting, but I actually had to really, really try at that, even to just get a C. And so I was like, oh, I want to do that thing. And then I applied for grad school in a PhD program, and they rejected me, not because I wasn't good enough, but apparently because they were going to fire all the faculty. But it worked out great for them because they got jobs at NVIDIA, and now they're all filthy rich. So if they had been working at UVA, they'd just be making like teachers' salaries, still trying to play politics with the department that wanted to go towards like compilers or data scientists. And now they're like, oh, I have a $20 million rich. Like, I just bought another one last week. Like
Oh,
my stock through the roof. So, like, you know, when let chaos provide. But yeah, I didn't. I also like I had a job working in that field for a long time at University of Virginia, using my computer science knowledge applied to archaeological monuments in ancient Rome. So it was like taking large laser scans of ancient monuments and making it useful for like museum applications, also for scholarly knowledge representations, like how many people could get in and out of the Colosseum, or like how did the water flow through the aqueducts, or could you see the column of Trajan from the Forum of Trajan, and things like that. They use that kind of stuff a lot in lines of sight in archaeology. Like if you want to see, on what day of the year in history
Right. If you're
did this,
comparing a text saying this happened, then you're able to kind of go, oh, well, could this actually have happened?
or especially with like Neolithic sites, if you find like a Neolithic stone structure and you want to figure out, like, is it a calendar? Did it align to the solstice on this day in prehistoric history? You would need a computer to figure that out, and some pretty accurate rendering techniques. And you can just change the alignment with these monuments and see where the shadows cast. Romans did that a lot with their obelisks and stuff like that. So checking alignments, I think that's pretty witchy and cool.
No, it's badass. I mean, it just, I guess if you're going to make something in stone, it's worth putting the extra little bit of time into it to be like, well, if we do it like this, then we can use it as a clock, or whatever.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I remember seeing that stuff in Ireland the first time I ever went there, and there's this cave that's just it's a cairn, a funeral cairn is the word, on someone's farm. It's like 4,000 years old, and there's the first in that one cairn, and it's not even protected. I mean, it's a heritage site, but like there's no fence or anything. You just have to get the key from the farmer and know the guy, and you go in there, and there's not only the earliest known representation of a human face. There's like a face drawing with a crown on it, obviously like a king or something. But they drew the Earth and the moon at the precise angle of relation that they're at in their orbit at whatever particular date that was.
right.
And the cool thing is they're both round.
Uh-huh.
So like you have a human face being drawn, and they knew the Earth and the moon were round
Right.
4,000 years ago. Like, fuck you, Middle Ages and Catholic Church, like,
Well, shit. I mean, even the Romans had that shit down, look down a well, go, oh, so not even
yeah.
the Romans also did, not even the Romans, like they were just even the Romans. So,
Tying it back to the pirate theme, like how do you use a damn sextant and stuff
right.
like that before they
Yeah,
know,
well,
like,
the whole
things like
longitude thing, figuring all of that out was pretty fucking remarkable. Like that's one of those stories that there's a fantastic book called Longitude by I want to say Davis Sobel, that breaks the entire process of how they went and figured all of it out. Very, very cool.
that's neat. Yeah, like, have you ever learned about the Kon-Tiki, the
Yeah, we
Norwegian?
learned about it in school.
Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
exactly. But I mean, they knew all of that about all those currents. Who's the first person to set off from South America to the South Pacific, and then somehow get word back?
Yeah, right.
There's a thing there.
One of my favorite stories from that era with the longitude thing is it's cool. I just got a message back from somebody I'm trying to set up for one of these, who is an expert on Italian vendettas. So I just saw the little message pop up. I'm like, that's cool. But one of the
What
weird,
era?
I
Like,
think Middle Ages, but I'm not quite sure. I guess I'll find out. But did you know what sympathetic magic was?
I
Basically,
don't.
the idea that, because it was right after they discovered magnets. So action from a distance, right? That was the new thing they were figuring stuff out about. And they got this idea in their head that if you stabbed somebody with a sword, that if you then took the sword away and heated it up, the person who you stabbed would feel it.
All right.
And so part of calculating longitude was you had to know the time in the port that you left and the local time. And then you could figure out how far you'd gone. And so one of the things they would do, like the example in this particular story, is they would stab a dog and leave it sewn open. And then in the home port at noon, they would fire the weapon. And if the dog responded, you know, and the dog probably was responding all the time because it was in pain,
Right.
that was one of the ways that they tried to figure out longitude. It's messed up, but really interesting.
That's fascinating. A
And
fascinating.
awful, yeah.
What is the? I can't remember the term when you describe something like false equivalence. Yeah, that's it. Like a false
It's what?
equivalent.
Oh, false equivalent. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the whole causation thing. Um, so that actually plays back into your painting, not the knife part, but the science part. Tell us about what your, I guess, specialty is for what you focus on with your art.
Oh, so my paintings, my Instagram for my paintings, if you like them, is Dylla Physics Art. My name Dylla, Dylla, Physics Art, and I have them on my website, kimdylla.com. But I started painting the equipment in my dad's lab. So I started with like cryo modules and parts of the particle accelerator at Jefferson Lab. Obviously, I can't paint down in there because it's like a clean room and stuff, but I go down in there and take photos, and then from the photos I like make croppings of sort of what would be like an abstract composition, but then the painting is actually photoreal. So I like photorealism. I like painting, especially like reflection and specularity and
Yeah, those
line,
are
but the composition is like really abstract. It's about like shape, line, light, color, and you don't can't immediately recognize what it is. And then my uncle in Germany worked at the Max Planck Institute on the Wendelstein 7X stellarator. And a stellarator is a machine that simulates the inside of a star with the aim to create nuclear fusion. And that stellarator now has gotten like the closest of anyone to doing that with incredibly complex geometry for these electromagnetic fields and stuff. So they're really crazy looking. And I had the privilege of going in there when that one was being built and taking pictures. So the last series I did was of the stellarator paintings. And then like I did an exhibition, I think it was 2 years ago now in DC at the Physics Congress, which was super cool because I like exhibiting the paintings around scientists in addition to just exhibiting them around artists in the gallery space. Because when I exhibit them around art world people, they tend to react to the quality of the painting and the idea of the painting. It's obviously I've been to like art school, but when I show them around science people, they react to the content. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy between people who get your craft and people who get your content.
mhm.
And that's applicable to like any field that's creative, I think. So, um, a lot of people look at my clothes or something and they'll be like, oh, that looks cool, but they don't understand the context in which it fits into like the industrial or goth scene or the metal scene and what that implies, or
And the
they
legit
never.
practicality of making something that you have to wear on stage that's going to function properly and not fall apart.
Yeah, or just like if you took, bring it to the clothes thing because it's an easy analogy. If you took a pair of like trip pants from a Hot Topic in the early 2000s and you put those on like Ogre from Skinny Puppy and you put him on stage, like I think the fans would react in a certain way to like him looking like he should be a fan at a Korn concert, kind of thing, versus like if you
Figuring out the
take
aesthetics and working
yeah,
on
if you take like a painting that looks like what's that guy Thomas Kincaid, yeah, the painter of light. Sorry, I thought Vermeer had that title, but the mall art pyramid scam gallery guy, and you put that in like a high art gallery, like people are not going to be impressed with the technique or the context of it. It doesn't make any sense, or the content. But if you put that in front of different people, like in a mall, or like the kind of art they have in the cruise galleries on cruise ships, like I don't know about like the goth cruise, but I'm like, who is buying this? Like, who thinks if you're interested in art enough to go to the art gallery, like why are you buying this kind of uh, cheesy illustration that doesn't make any sense? So I think as an artist, it's pretty important to take into account the viewer, much like in quantum physics, you're taking into account the observer of whatever you're making. So like who are you making the music for and who are you making the art for? And with my work, it's been really interesting because mainly science people buy my work, like large scientific companies to put in their offices, but sometimes like physics students and sometimes just private collectors. But that's different than art world people showing it, and how people receive that is interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, people were, appreciating not just the technique, but the content, and it is an interesting dichotomy because what I do, it's very, very open to interpretation, whereas yours is pretty much this is what this is. What even if it's been abstracted or whatever, it's still this is the thing. So,
Yours has a narrative too, like mine's lacking in narrative and it's lacking in human content. Once you put a human in the picture, which is actually how I started painting machines in the first place, because I'm a bald woman. I don't have any hair. This is obviously a wig, but I lost my hair when I was 16 to an immune condition called alopecia areata, which I'm convinced I got from painting with oils in a small, unventilated room when I was a kid. But anyway,
is it on
it,
autoimmune?
it's autoimmune, yeah. And like it was back in the turpentine days, and I loved to use my hands on all the cadmiums and everything. But anyway, what was I saying? Where oh yeah. So yeah, I was really interested in mannequins. So I started doing like self-portraits because the easiest thing to paint from life yourself. So I was like pose myself but among a bunch of mannequins, and just make a tableau kind of thing in this like fucked up window display. And people kept reading all this like feminist context into it and political stuff and all this. And I'm like, not that I'm not a feminist, but I really dislike talking about politics publicly. I think it makes me like an angry person and it's polarizing and I think it's personal. Like I vote, but I don't want to talk about a political issue with my art. And so I got super frustrated and I was like, what can I paint that has no humans and no narratives and it's not subjective? Machines. Like this is paint machines. But yeah, your piece is not that they're like political or something, but once you put a human in there,
Sure.
humans are reading their own thoughts and
Right.
experiences
And that's a
into
huge
the
part of
human that you
why I
painted.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I had a show once and somebody made some very incorrect assumptions about my work and the figures in them, and it really bothered me because like they were connecting the way I look and the figures in my work. Except it wasn't my work. They were making an assumption about somebody else's, but it bothered me because how I look and who I am and what all that stuff has absolutely nothing to do with the figure choices that I put in my stuff. Like I'm not
Right.
doing gothy stuff because it's like I just make what I make. And that really bothered me enough that I tried to come up with the most anonymous when I did for a few years, these anonymous figures. And it ended up being bald naked men, specifically men, because if I did bald naked women, whoa, are you still there or did I lose you? I think I've lost her for a minute. Hopefully she will reappear. Hmm. Well, this is a first. I wonder if her phone died. So anyway, I'm going to pause this and hopefully we will redo it. Anyway, I'll just finish the bald naked men story because if I do bald naked women, too many people read into weird things about it. And the men, I was able to just kind of like hear these people figures in a situation interpret. So that's that story. Hopefully we'll get Kim back in a moment. Commercial time. So normally this is when I would hold up a product and say, hey, look at this thing I do. Well, I can't do that right now because I'm talking about art. So in addition to all the music stuff that I do and writing and things, I'm an artist. I've got a degree in fine arts and everything. And if you really need to know, there's a video tagged on the end of this playlist or podcast on the end of this playlist, however it works, that has all of my bullshit on it. But anyway, yeah, I do a ton of commission work, book covers, things like that. I mostly specialize in oil painting. I'm available for commissions. Recently, I've been trusted by people to do memorials or whatever you want to call them for living animals of their pets. My favorite being people who ask me to paint their pets as historical figures. So this picture here is a dog that was painted up to be Vlad the Impaler, which was a great deal of fun. Anyway, I am available for all of your art needs. So if you need anything like that for book covers or illustrations or CDs or whatever media is the thing somewhere in the future of now, assuming I'm not dead, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do it for you.
Sorry again.
Oh, yeah. So no,
I'm gonna just backtrack that thought to how you're making your figures anonymous, or like.
Yeah, basically, well, that was kind of it. Is I was just trying to keep. I want people to look at the figures not as individual, specific types of people, but read them and like being able to overlay their own ideas on top of it. So it's like they were figuring out. I was like, look at it and project yourself into it and how you would deal with that situation, or how you're reading them dealing with it. And if you did that with women, it didn't work. Like people. Hmm?
Totally. It's so hard to come up with a template human that someone doesn't read any sort of social context into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's much more difficult with that because you have like fashion choices and hair choices and everyone reads into that. And yet even a bald man, they could be like, is he a skinhead?
Right.
I feel like you a businessman looking guy, but then even there's like a narrative. So it's like, who is your viewer and how do you make the template human? But I think people who write pop songs have to take that into account too, because if you write a successful pop song, like if you look at like Taylor Swift's lyrics, all her listeners are putting themselves in her shoes with these really generic lyrics that like apply to so many situations. Whereas if you took like folk songs from the 70s, they're creating these much more literature, like very specific imagery and situations. And then modern pop just leaves it open so that everyone can relate to the love song or the breakup song. Sentimentality sells with that. But I think as an artist, like it's super interesting to think about what kind of person is viewing that and how do you make it neutral? Yeah, that's super frustrating. Like what did the person, if I can ask, because it's interesting, what did the person read into your art that you weren't trying to put there?
I'm always fascinated by that. Honestly, at this point in my career, I don't worry about that anymore. I just make it and try and stay as honest as I can with whatever it is I'm talking about. And if people get it, they get it. And if they don't, oh well, I can't, the only time I ever would really step in if somebody was like, so you're real down with white power, huh? Then I'd have to be like, well, okay, we need to talk. But for the most part, it's just like I want people to it's just as legitimate. They're and if not more so, because like I know what the thing means to me. So
I've definitely had that happen to me before because I have a whole black metal band, which like a bunch of people have problems with black metal anyway, because a lot of people in black metal have problematic political issues. I'm not really sure why, but I just like the music. But I have a band that I sang in German in, and like, and this one song, the band Stahlsarg in the UK, I did a song for them in German. I have another black metal band that I sing in German too. I speak German, so it sounds brutal. Like coming from an industrial world, I always like the songs that's like you sing in German. I can hear them. Rammstein sounds cool. Like so does, any number of German industrial bands. I was like, why not use it? Like I was taking a course in German poetry at the time. But anyway, this song is about The White Rose by Sophie Scholl, who was like, got put to death by the Nazis for writing a resistance paper. And the song is me screaming her dying words. Like, you can't get more like anti-Nazi than that. And the song got called Nazi because there's a bunch of bald people singing in German in a black metal band about World War II. I'm like, do you even translate
Right,
the
yeah.
title of the song? Like,
Right,
people jump.
that hair
You have
trigger
to
is
call that out.
difficult. Like yeah, you can't just look at superficial things. Most of the time anyway, like
But
yeah.
that's why I just don't even touch anything that has like socio-political interpretations because it's almost like kicking a hornet's nest anymore. And I would like to talk about other things that are kind of more universal. I like to travel a lot and, you know, like getting tied down in like one country's politics, I
Mhm.
think it's lame, but science and art and music tie everyone together. And, I was going to say pirates, but there's not really pirates in every country because some countries are landlocked and they can you have pirates without water? I'm not really sure.
I think you can have the intent. Sure. Yeah, yeah.
My boyfriend's from Sweden and he's in a band that sings about Vikings and everything is Viking themed. And I was like, yeah, Vikings are definitely the pirates of Scandinavia because they're seafaring people. They go and raid and pillage, like they steal gold from monasteries and like they don't have a lot of natural resources during the winter, so they just go acquire it with their superior seafaring skills and swarthiness. And like they're drunk a lot on meat or, high on mushrooms or something. So, you know, and actually like Dilla, my name, like my family came over from Germany like 3 generations ago, but Dilla is not a German name after I learned German. But when I started going to Scandinavia, there's a lot of words that end in YLLA, one of which being fylla, which means really drunk, which is a fun, you know, nice word to use. But it's actually in the Eagle saga from the Icelanders sagas from the Viking times. There's a character, the very first Dilla, Turidur Dilla, my first ancestor, who carried this name, which must have been a nickname that the family took when they immigrated off the island during the Little Ice Age. But it means swarthy, like a motherfucking
There
pirate.
you go.
Quite cool. But I was like, hey, who would win in a battle between pirates and Vikings? And I think the answer is terrain, comes down to it. Like
Mhm.
if you're in the fjords, like the low-lying, very navigable ships of the Vikings would do much better, and they would do better with the cold water. But if you're in the Caribbean, they would probably like overheat and die. It's
Yeah,
all
at
different.
armament, the cannon are definitely going to do much better than the spears and bows. So,
Yeah, tropical spears. Yeah, I mean, there's a difference of about 700 years too in the time you've got advanced weaponry there.
true.
Gunpowder had been discovered or invented. Or did they just, I don't know anything about gunpowder. Did they discover it or invent it? I think
Well, I
both.
mean, it was just, well, I mean, it was invented by the Chinese. That was the first. It was for fireworks. Like it was
Oh, yeah.
a Taoist monk discovered it, made it for fireworks, and then nobody really thought much. It's kind of like the wheel in South America. Like they figured out the wheel, but no, not actually a good use for it. Like so, they made toys with wheels on them, but they never like turned it into a tool. So it took them a
Right.
while to figure out how to like actually use the gunpowder as something other than fireworks.
Maybe someone who had a need for turning it into a destructive entity, which is a different thing of like going back to the science thing. You invent all this, nuclear fusion, and then someone figures out how to make a bomb out of it rather than a power plant. You know, obviously it's different with making wheels for carts and cars rather than just toys.
Well, you know
But
what?
it's interesting.
The theory for that, which I think is really cool, is that
Yeah.
the only pack animal they had in South America were llamas, yeah, llamas, I think. And you can't really ride them or attach anything to them, so you can't make carts. So
Right.
without the ability to have a cart, you don't really need wheels unless you're rolling stuff. Like you can use rollers, but yeah, I think that was why the theory is why it was never caught on. Um, but they were so badass in other ways. The whole blood debt thing is just so fucking cool, just as a concept.
Right.
Um, but So that
Yeah, I guess the Neolithic people used the log rollers, but they also, like I'm not really sure what uh, year the Rapa Nui on Easter Island made those big statues, but they did not use log rollers. They rocked them back and
yeah,
forth, like
yeah.
they kind of like do thing. And yeah, I guess that's like a South American technique. Okay. I mean, if you have a llama and the Andes, a wheel is not going to be very useful. But
Right.
if you're in Patagonia, maybe they are. I don't know.
I don't know, but it's simple machines are just so cool because once you understand oh fulcrums, like once you get that down, then you're good because everything else kind of comes off of that one simple. Well, if I make this really long pole, I can lift this big heavy thing, So yeah, or
Yeah,
with just the
obviously
aliens
the aliens. Yeah. We
stuff.
should do one on like who has the craziest conspiracy theory about like how the wheel was, popularized or like simple machines were brought places or the whole like Graham, what's his name? The conspiracy theory guy on Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, and he's always like, "You pesky academics! Like the Atlanteans were populating the Earth in the post-Ice Age time. The Egyptians couldn't possibly have come up with the concept of a pyramid by like unbridled use of slavery."
Yeah. And it's amazing to me. And some of those other reoccurring themes when I was growing up, we were all America's number one in this or that or the other thing, and we we're all proud to be smart. And so watching kind of in real time as the idea that actual learning and things like that are frowned upon or discouraged or whatever, it's so disheartening.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Like someone
amazing.
from YouTube University knowing more about measles than a doctor or someone from the CDC. Like,
Mm.
are we going to have YouTube University like nuclear fusion reactors? Like, like
Outdoor.
I hope not. I mean, there was actually this guy, he was like a Boy Scout who made a mini nuclear reactor in his a fission, obviously, in his garden shed and like was arrested and the whole area they really mishandled it because they just threw a bunch of the stuff away into a landfill when it was
Don't worry about the
highly
glowing
reactive.
thing.
Yeah, it's just a bit spicy. Click, click,
Mhm.
click, click.
Yeah, right. What's it
The
possible? Hey, smell this. Yeah.
oh man. Yeah,
So,
I recently got into collecting radioactive antiques. Speaking of that, like
oh,
my
like
boyfriend got
the
me this
radium
radium
glass.
glass. Yeah, it's super trendy now, but it's quite cool. I
Yeah.
never thought I would be proud of my like China cabinet full of glowing things.
Well, yeah, it fits with the ectoplasm thing.
Right.
So,
They actually have some that are quite dangerous, like the radium clocks. They're pretty dangerous. And red and white fiesta ware, which is like the crockware you get in basically every like Mexican restaurant in America, as long as it was made after like I think it was 1976 or something, it's fine. But the glaze they used before that is like off the charts radioactive, and it's fine as long as there's no chip on the plate. But like how many plates that have been used
right.
in a restaurant for 30 years have chips? Like a lot of
And
them.
then, have you read the book on the radium girls?
Oh yeah,
Who are
that's
like,
crazy.
yeah, doing all of that stuff and then you melted, you know.
Yeah, licking the brush that they're using to paint the radium so that the point is nice and sharp, and then their jaw falls off, and
Yeah,
then they're like, "Oh, just not a big deal, just a flesh wound."
yeah,
Like
it's all right,
she's
it's all right.
fine.
It's fine. Walk it off.
Yeah, can't possibly be related. Like,
Yeah, right. So, where are you, like you've done, I want the word I keep going to is costume, but that's not all accurate. Clothing for like real high profile bands, like bands always everybody's watching this has heard of. And wrestling that's been on, major TV stuff. And, and you have performed yourself as parts of huge acts. Where where do you want to go next? Like what like if you could
Oh,
do something.
so like with Killer Custom Rockwear, my clothing company, I've dressed a lot of bands that are really big in the metal world. Everyone from like Alice Cooper to King Diamond. I worked with Judas Priest. I just did a new wardrobe for Sabaton on that tour. I done like WWE, AEW, and like honestly, the only band I really need to like chase for kind of like an accolade or like a notch on my belt or a Girl Scout badge or whatever would be Iron Maiden because they're my absolute favorite band, and it would be like a life goal to have someone in Iron Maiden wear my stage gear, even though they're not really a stage gear wearing band. I feel like Bruce Dickinson needs a lot of help with what he wears, even though he has someone who does his stage gear
Yeah,
for
he should
years.
go
It
like do
makes
some like stylized pilot stuff, you know? That seems like it would be totally.
right. Make him up. I don't think he's flying right now, but yeah. And then a couple of them wear like cool pants, so I could make some cool jeans, and that would be awesome just to be a part of the Iron Maiden show in some way. And I feel like doing a little work on the Priest tour or like, stuff like that is like one step below there. Like I'm almost there. But honestly, what I'm just trying to do is make my clothing business work for me a little bit better because if you're this working in the entertainment industry, I feel like you're always just chasing the next accolade or the biggest artist or whatever, not actually reflecting on like, do I have enough of a resume that works, and can I just do what I want now? And I'm kind of at that point, like I have enough of a resume that I don't need to be in WrestleMania every year or the main event. Like I have plenty of wrestlers asking me for gear.
Mm.
That just gets overwhelming, and you're always chasing this next biggest thing, and you have this you're making yourself relevant, or your self image of yourself is based on like, am I on the biggest tour right now?
Right.
Am I in the biggest match? And it's not great.
Hmm.
Like I've done enough stuff that people can take me seriously, both in music and in like the clothing business. Now I just want to not have to work like 100 hours a week or something because I'm
Hmm.
taking on way too many projects. Like this stuff takes a lot of time. I want to be able to like work at a more reasonable pace and be a little bit more picky about my projects. And a lot of it is setting boundaries with my clients because I am really bad at that. As a performer, when someone's like, I need this thing for this show in like 2 weeks and the schedule's already way fully booked, I will always want to say yes just to make them happy. Or like, I'm really bad at time management, and especially I'm not necessarily horrible at that, but I'm horrible at estimating how much time something takes. Like, I mean, all artists are like that. How much time does it take to make an album or to write a song? That's an impossible answer. Like, I have a
Yeah, sometimes
schedule
for me
full,
it's like this, sometimes it's like a month, you know, for one fucking
right?
clip.
You can't put a time limit on creativity. You just have to allow yourself plenty of time to be creative. And I have to make between 5 and 6 different clothing pieces a week that are all completely different.
Mhm.
Like, how long does that take? I don't know. And like, was I really focused that day, or like, did I get distracted a lot? Or did I even? I'm nocturnal, so like, did I even get into the office before like 5 p.m.? Am I here till 4 a.m. or did someone ask me to go to dinner and then I got distracted or whatever? Like,
Are
so
you
I want to.
on
What,
tour
go
with these bands and work like do all the sizing and all that stuff and actually make it for them while you're on tour with them, right?
So sometimes, like it depends. If I'm just making one piece of clothing, it's not cost efficient to like fly
Mhm.
there and take the time out of my schedule to do that. But like I just did a whole wardrobe for Sabaton and they were on tour with Judas Priest. So I like flew out to some of their gigs to do a fitting of the whole band and make sure all the gear fits well and deliver it rather than, I mean, it's pretty much the same cost as like shipping a box of like 20 pieces of clothing to like Sweden or something. I just ship me and then
Mhm.
make sure everything fits correctly. And then that's the fun part, is like seeing it on stage or, being in that environment. And I know the whole Judas Priest crew too. So like that was great seeing all them. But normally I just do everything via email and shipping things. And then when the band comes around on tour, I can like go to the show and fix anything or do alterations. But yeah, if someone orders like a whole wardrobe, I'll fly there. and depending on where the band's located, either meet them on like a US tour or at a festival, anywhere they have like a day off where we can do stuff. But like music wise, I've put my eggs in way too many baskets right now just because after like I had a lot of fun being Volvatron in Guar and it gave me like a name that people recognize, but certainly wasn't my first project, won't be my last, but the personality wise and the way they tour, it wasn't a great fit for me. And I would like to get that kind of chance again, but like with a different group of people. And I recently got asked to audition for one of my favorite bands of all time, which was like mind blowing that they even asked me to audition. And then they called me back, which was really cool. I don't think it's going to go from there because honestly, I don't think I'm talented enough to get that gig. But the fact that I even got asked to audition or called back gave me hope that maybe one day if I just keep doing this thing and singing and performing that like I can be in another like major touring act that needs a singer that actually would make it like fun to be on tour. But right now, Cruachan in Ireland, they're really fun. I get to play a lot of really cool big festival gigs with them, and I love hanging out with them. I got that gig in 2020 on the 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise. And then I've got Ectoplasm, which is really fun. But right now we're auditioning two new guitarists because of life situation changes. So I think we found our people, but anytime you lose momentum, that's a little frustrating because we had a lot of momentum with that project. It kind of took off. People were responding really positively to it. And member change kind of puts us back like 6 months before we can kind of get rolling again. But maybe it brings new energy that we needed to that. And then I've got this studio project called The Burned Over down in Atlanta with Mark Donnells of the Yacht Rock Review Band, which is awesome. But he was also in like Skid Row and Butch Walker and a bunch of others. He's just an absolute monster guitarist. But I made their stage gear, and then he wanted to do a metal band and asked me to sing on it. And we've been recording this album for 5 years. Not that it took us that long, but just going back and forth between Atlanta and writing really complex songs is finally done. So we decided to self-release that. So I'm starting like social media campaign to put that out there, and we're releasing it single style with music videos for each one. So that's like a fun artistic project. But hopefully, like, yeah, goals would be figuring out how to get Killa Custom Rockwear to not take over my entire life where I can be like engaged in making clothes for a living, but it doesn't, I don't only do this and I'm not just constantly chasing the next big show. And then maybe getting another chance in a pretty exciting touring band, like to sing for that. If not, I'm pretty happy where I am. It's all good.
That's always a good thing, You've got your baseline of all the functions,
Yeah.
So, well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was, yeah, no, I was really glad it worked out because I'm just always looking for these, people who have actually followed these passions and stuff like that. So,
You're one of them.
well, yeah, I know, but
When I
like,
explain you to
I know
others,
me, so
right. When I explain you to others, that's usually the way I use to describe it. I'm like, Steve's one of the few people I know that actually gets to be a full-time creative, but he's not just like one type of creative either.
I have to be full time with everything because no one single thing does it, but it all feeds into itself, which works out really nicely, as long as I don't pick or so.
Cool. Well,
And you already, these will all go out whenever they end up doing like a month or something. I'll drop you a line ahead of time, find out if there's anything specific to that time period that you want to mention. But you already mentioned your website, which was Killa.
oh yeah, so my website, if you want me to make you clothes, I make clothes for everyone. You don't have to be famous. It's Killa, Kylla, KillaCustomRockwear.com. And then on Instagram, I'm at Killa Custom Rockwear. And on Facebook, I'm Kim Dylla, or Kim Killa Dylla is my public page. And I post about all my bands, The Burned Over, Ectoplasm with 2 Ks, and Cruachan right now. So that's, I guess, all the shout outs Oh yeah, and my art is Dilla Physics Art on Instagram or kimdilla.com.
And she has pre-made stuff too on her site as well. So it's like you don't necessarily even have to go through the whole like fitting process. You can actually just go and buy something that's there. So
Oh yeah, the Killer Custom Rockwear has like a ready wear line. Like honestly, that was like not a financially great success, but we still have some cool stuff there, and I'll be making some unique pieces. Um, oh yeah, and I got just got invited to vend again at the Ocean City Comic Con. I'm gonna be like a Comic Con guest, so I was just thinking maybe I should do more ready wear and go to some Comic Cons because
yeah, yeah. Make superhero outfits.
right,
So
don't have to just I can make some pirate costumes.
there you go. That brings it all right back around.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right. Well,
Eva.
thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Right. So as always, you can find prints, original artwork, T-shirt, tarot deck, whatever else we're selling at any given time at egolikeness.bigcartel.com. You can find all the latest news about stuff, egolikenessband.com. We are on Bandcamp, egolikeness.bandcamp.com. Stoneburner is stoneburnerofficial.bandcamp.com. All of my projects are under Wolfcore Records. So it's wolfcore-records.bandcamp.com or stevenarcher.bandcamp.com, etc. We're pretty easy to find. You can find our books on Amazon. We're published through Raw Dog Screaming Press. Ego is currently on Metropolis Records. Stoneburner is currently on Cop International. And we're also pretty easy to find on the social networks. We're there under our names, Stephen Archer, Donna Lynch on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Ego Likeness, Art and Music with little underscores between each letter or between each word. And then Donna's got us on Bluetooth. Donna's got us on Blue Sky as well. This is like the fifth of these I've recorded, so this is the one I'm using.